Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines. Available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late-night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with former teacher of mathematics and physics, Tricia Robertson, who was a long-term council member, being on the original council of the Scottish Society for Psychical Research. Now, she was a tutor for the Department of Adult and Continuing Education at the University of Glasgow, in addition to 30 years of experience in investigating spontaneous cases. Tricia has appeared on various TV and radio programs and has a wealth of experience in investigating spontaneous cases. Tricia Robertson, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It is lovely to have you on, and this is an interview based on your two books. The first one is Things You Can Do When You're Dead, and the second latest book, More Things You Can Do When You're Dead.
Yes.
So great titles.
Very inventive, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, these are your first books that you've authored?
They are.
Okay.
I have published papers in psychical research, but these are the first actual books.
Yeah, the first actual books, yeah. Well, that's let's go into your background to begin with, because your background was as a former teacher of mathematics and physics.
Yes.
Just tell us about that career as well.
Well, it's really quite boring, isn't it? Just a school teacher of mathematics and physics. There's not a lot to be said about it, really. I did enjoy it. I was a good teacher, and the pupils did well. That's really all I can say about that, really.
Do you look back on that now and it just seems a lifetime away?
Oh gosh, it's a different lifetime completely. Different chapter in the book. My book.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel you had an active interest though while you was teaching? You had an active interest in these subjects, in the alternative, in the paranormal?
Not at all. I had no interest in the paranormal whatsoever until about 1982.
Right, well that is interesting then. What happened in 1982 to trigger you?
Well, I don't really know. It's one of those bizarre things where I was married and we had two good jobs, we had two nice cars, two small children, and everything in the garden was rosy. And for some reason, intellectually, I started to look into the paranormal. I thought I was going with another friend to a spiritualist church, and she thought she was going with me. But from going there, it piqued my interest in what was going on here. Was this a lot of rubbish, or is there more to it? And I have to stress here, I had no religious feeling whatsoever going into it. It was just purely an intellectual interest in the beginning.
So, would you tell your peers that you was having this interest? And if so, how would they receive that?
Well, I didn't really bother telling anybody, not really, because I was just looking into it. I hadn't decided one way or the other if there was anything into it. That's what you do in science. You look into something to see if there's something to follow up. That's what you do in any form of science. And at the very beginning, I was just looking into it. And then I realized there was something here, so let's try and find out what it is. Right,
okay, very interesting. Your husband at the time, was he into the subjects at all?
Not at all, no. Just let me get on with it.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. So he supported you to allow you to explore this. Now, when you started on this course of exploration, what sort of books sort of came your way? What sort of information was you sort of consuming at the time?
Well, I went first of all to do a lot of personal experience watching people, watching especially mediums give information from a platform. And I would sit quietly with a notebook at the back, taking notes, and then I would catch people on the way out, asking them if what they got was true, because I could read it out to them. And I began to realise, yeah, there's something more in this than actually meets the eye. And book-wise, well, I think one of the first books I read was a book by a South African lawyer called Jasper Swain. It was called On the Death of My Son. He had no religious belief whatsoever, and his 19-year-old son was killed in a car crash. And from the day, within the hour the boy had been killed, the boy appeared to him inside his car and could give him such a lot of information. It's a fabulous book. It's called On the Death of My Son by Jasper Swain. Another book that came my way was, it sounds a bit twee now, was Doris Stokes' book, Whispers in My Ear. And you know, there's a lot of sense in it. And that also piqued my interest from a different point of view. And then I began to read some of the science stuff from the well-known sort of scientists like, I've forgotten the man. It'll come to me about the one I'm trying to think of. All sorts of different books. I read some philosophy on it by an alleged collective unconscious called Silver Birch. And these are fabulous books. See, I have a common sense, and everything has to make sense to me. And every one of these books had a certain sense in it, especially the Silver Birch philosophical ones. They were really, really down to earth. I know that sounds crazy. And the chapter that swayed me was this unconscious energies debate with a minister. And it's quite fascinating. He left the minister standing. The minister didn't have anything to reply to what he said, because it's so logical and common sense. There has to be sense in it. And there is. So that was kind of the early beginnings. That was the beginning.
Now, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, I know a few scientists, friends I would like to class them as well. And, nice people, very, very intelligent. But they would not look at this as very favourable, because there's no evidence base there on this stuff. Now, I think you would say that science sort of versus reasonable doubt, well, beyond reasonable doubt.
Right. There are two forms of proof that we accept in our social circles. We accept scientific proof and mathematical proof. Like 2 apples and 2 apples are always going to make 4 apples. That's not going to change. Some scientific theorems have proof, and that proof will always come out if the theory is correct. But we also rely very strongly on court of law evidence as beyond reasonable doubt. And I can assure you there's a wealth of evidence out there by scientists as well. There's a wealth of evidence out there as to the fact that we do survive, or in some form of our consciousness survives our physical body. And that's all I'll call it, is consciousness. I don't want to talk about a spirit world. I don't want to talk about any religion, because it's true for everyone, no matter if you're a Hindu, a Christian, an atheist, whatever. Your consciousness will survive, and the evidence is there that shows it. This is what my books are all about: is evidence. In the first book, off the top of my head, one of the best pieces of evidence is the crash of the R101. That was a space. One of these doodlebug things, even long before I was born, and which the evidence that came through to the sitters was amazing, absolutely unbelievable. So everybody should read that. Even if you don't read my book, read The Airman Who Would Not Die by John G. Fuller, which gives a great account of the airman who would not die. There are so many. My own researches have thrown up lots of evidence, personal evidence through research, and also things that have happened to me and people that I know and trust. As I say, there's just so much. And this is the problem with all of the paranormal. There's such a range of phenomena goes on through the whole thing that you really have to stick to one subject in depth if you want to follow that subject correctly. Otherwise, we go all over the place and we don't get anywhere. So whether you want to look at the evidence for survival through mediumships, drop-in communicators, materialization, apparitions, we could go on here for 100 hours talking about the evidence.
Yes, absolutely. You're completely right there. And what you said there as well about really concentrating on consciousness. That's what I would say is the key to all this.
This is a coming thing. This is what scientists are looking at. You've got Dr. Peter Fenwick, who's a famous
great guy, yeah,
a neuroscientist, as you probably know. Peter is a great guy. I've had him in this very house. Peter has been sitting right behind me here. We've discussed things, and they're looking into the fact that there is evidence that your consciousness survives with all its memories, all its traits. If you're not a nice guy here when you die, you're not a nice guy when you go over there. Some of them curse and swear and do all the things that they did. Not that I can't swear, because I can, but their own personal traits, their syntax, the way of speaking is there. And Dr. Peter Fenwick and his wife, they've written a book now, or they are writing it, on deathbed experiences, not of the people who die, but of the doctors and nurses around them who see, hear and feel things. And I've just got my shivers as I said that. Now, Dr. Peter Fenwick's nobody's fool. Professor Stephen Browdy in America. Stephen, I know quite well. He's definitely started off as a skeptic. He definitely did. He might argue, but he did start off as a skeptic. But I see Stephen more and more becoming really, now that he's retired, he's 65, now that he's retired, he's looking at the evidence, which goes back to your previous question. Why do scientists in universities look down their nose? Because they're afraid that people are going to think they've gone a bit gaga. Now, they said the same thing about William Crookes. They said the same thing about Oliver Lodge because they were investigating the phenomena associated with spiritualism. They said, oh, well, of course, they're past their best. Rubbish. Sir William Crookes wasn't Sir William Crookes. He was only William Crookes when he started to investigate materialization over the years. It was in later life that he got his knighthood, still doing fantastic work in his scientific field, as indeed was Oliver Lodge. People try to dismiss Lodge and saying, oh, well, of course, the poor soul lost a son. That's why he's interested. Rubbish, again. Oliver Lodge was interested in survival of consciousness many, many years before his son was killed, and so on and so forth. We are fed disinformation by the media, by the state, and whoever the powers that be surround us. They don't want us for some reason to know this is true. I can give you a classic example of this if you like.
Well, yeah, do you know what? That's leading on to my next question. That'd be great. What are some of the best evidence as a former as a scientist as well? What would you say is some of the best evidence for you when science is all about the evidence?
Well, could we just marry the two to begin with?
Sure.
Now, we all think, you and I think, everybody listening, looking, thinks that Houdini, the great Houdini, did not come back. And it was said that, he promised to come back to his wife and he never came back to his wife. Untrue. I have in front of me a signed statement with witnesses by a representative of the United Press, a well-known friend of the Houdinis, and this editor of the Scientific American magazine, which states quite categorically by Mrs. Houdini on the 9th of January 1929, regardless of any statement made to the contrary, I wish to declare that the message in its entirety and in the right sequence given to me by Arthur Ford, that's the medium, is the correct message prearranged by Mr. Houdini and myself, and it's signed Beatrice Houdini. Now, we all think he never came back. He did, but why don't we know that? Why don't we know of all the fantastic evidence that is actually there? Now, Mrs. Houdini is not going to lie about these things. There is no way. And that's just a very small example of how the media treat us, unfortunately.
Do you think that's done on purpose, or do you think it's just because those that write the stories and those in editorial are just have to be skepticism, sells paper, fear sells paper. If you're gonna go down routes of what we're talking about, it's not very sellable in some respects.
Well, it should be extremely sellable, because the biggest question any of us can ask ourselves is there any evidence that when we shell off this physical body, this part of us continue? It's the most important question ever. In fact, I think it was Steve Jobs that said, the one that died, the rich man, the billionaire.
Yes, that's it.
And he made a statement to that fact that his billions actually didn't mean anything. It was all about the way you lived your life, treated people, and investigating things like this. Is there any consciousness after we die?
Well, yes. I mean, if you watch the Steve Jobs movie, it comes full circle in the end, where he did actually heal a lot of his family issues that he had, and that's a great movie, by the way, just for Steve Jobs' life.
Haven't seen it.
It's really good. It's really good. It's done in a really clever way as well. But yes, it is true. Someone else said that to me this weekend as well. That yes, you can worry about money or as much as you want to accumulate it, but you don't take it with you.
Nope.
You don't even take the clothes. You don't even take your underwear with you. Let alone your makeup. I mean, it literally is all gone. And then you're down to, well, what is this? What was this? What was the experience behind my eyes that gave me this ability to feel separate but connected, but that I am the experience behind my eyes, that I'm having this experience, and it's beyond conceptualization. I don't feel like I'm a robot having this experience. I don't feel deprogrammed up. There's something much grander than this, and it is unexplainable. But I think we are here to touch upon what it could be, because by looking at consciousness or what it could be, I think it brings the world into a more peaceful place, because it brings us into a more peaceful place.
Absolutely. You've just reminded me of something, actually. When I was a child, I could only have been 5, 6 or 7. And now my family were not religious at all. And I can remember as a very small child lying in bed thinking, who is this me talking to me? And I'm not that way inclined at all. And I got myself so upset that I went through crying to my parents, and they just sort of said, there, don't bother. But I must have been subconsciously interested in this, although I didn't know it, from when I was a very small child. And in fact, you asked, I've digressed, we'll go back to the evidence again. You were talking about what's some of the best evidence. Well,
that's right.
Some of the best evidence is actually spontaneous apparitions where they can be verified. We call them veridical apparitions for a start. You can have some. It doesn't happen very often, but there are some people who can produce materialization in a hall with 200 people, where everybody sees the same thing, everybody hears the same messages, they see the same figure. I can tell you about that in detail if you want later, but one of the ones that's actually my favorite, and although it is from someone that I actually know, but this person had no experience of the paranormal whatsoever before, and no experience of the paranormal later. And this was a man who had sent his wife and children on holiday because he wanted to paint the lounge. And he lived in a house with very high ceilings, must have been 18, 20 feet ceilings. And he was minding his own business, painting the ceiling at the top corner. And I should say this man is a shopkeeper in Glasgow, in a place, not the nicest place in Glasgow. So you're not talking about the high echelons. Anyway, he's painting the ceiling. And as he's painting the ceiling, now we're 20 feet up in the air, he looked along, and 6 feet away from him was a man looking at him and pointing at him. This is 18 feet or so off the floor. He stared at the man in disbelief, of course, and this man had on a flat cap. He had a round, fully coloured face. He had on a shirt, a tie, and a jacket, and then there was nothing else below the jacket. He had no legs. Fully materialized, solid, and he was pointing at him and saying, tell them not to do it. Everything's going to be okay. And of course, the person I know blinked his eyes and looked again, and the man said, tell them not to do it. Everything's going to be okay. And then he disappeared. Poof, gone. Just like that. Nothing. Well, my friend nearly had an accident in the underwear department when that happened, and he took a terrible long time to get down the ladder, so much so that he had to sit in a chair the whole night and shake. He couldn't even make a cup of tea. Now, this is the interesting part. He recognized this man as a man who had died 6 years ago. He was a customer that used to come into the shop. And this man wasn't terribly old. He was only about 50 something when he died.
Oh, he's not old.
Not old at all, no. So, but his wife still came into the shop. So the man said, tell them not to do it. Everything's going to be okay. So that gave him a dilemma. Does he tell the wife? Does he not tell the wife? So the next day, fortunately for him, the wife did not come into the shop, to which he was relieved. He didn't try and go back up and do the painting, mind you. But the next day, the wife did come in. And he said to her, can I speak to you in the back shop, please? And she said, yes. So he told her the whole story about the man appearing, tell them not to do it. And she said, thank you very much. And she ran up and kissed him on the cheek and left. So he thought, all right. Now, I think he told the wife in self-defense because he didn't want the man to come back again when he was painting the ceiling. And I'm absolutely sure that's why he did it. Now, I have to tell you, this man didn't seek me out to tell me this story. I just happened to come across him by chance. Of course, there is no chance, as you and I know. And he's never had an experience before, never had one after. So weeks went by. And the woman kept coming into the shop, never said anything. And then one day she said to him, can I speak to you in the back shop? He said, sure. She said, I'm going to tell you what that was about. She said, our son has always been in trouble as a juvenile with the police. But her words, she said, the police have fitted him up for something he didn't do. And if he gets found guilty, he'll end up going to Berlin, to the big jail. And we don't want him to do that. So we made a plan. We were going to take him to Southern Ireland where he could stay for the rest of his life and nobody would touch him. So plans were being made for that. And my husband said to you, tell them not to do it. Everything will be okay. So we didn't take him. We took him to court. We went to court. The judge, the magistrate, whoever was there, read the papers and said, there's no case to answer here. Case admonished. So on the word of a half-materialized apparition, they didn't do it, and it all worked out right for them. Now, I'm not sure that I would have been confident enough to take the word of an apparition, but they did, and it worked out for them, which is amazing. And this man's never had anything since, and he was, to which he's very grateful, I have to say. So that was amazing.
And it's almost like that experience that they had was there for them, not just for to solve that case. Well, not to give to give them some trust in that, in the gut feeling, in a sense, that they can go along with what they feel must be a right thing to listen to from this apparition.
Well, it turned out later. We found out later. He found out before he spoke to me. The woman had said to him later, actually, one or two people have seen my husband before at the back fence or something like that.
Right.
This is a man. But this is an interesting question of consciousness, isn't it? This is an interesting question of emotion. 6 years ago, the man died, and he's still interested in what's happening to the family and still able to tell them.
Well, yeah, I was going absolutely, and maybe he came through not just with an interest in the family, but also to give her a spark, or the family a spark, that consciousness continues. And at that time, that it would have been the highest point for them to realise it does, because of the case that was happening. Had it come through at any other time, it would have been well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It was true anyway.
True.
What we had to say, but because of this case, it was pinnacle.
True. And there are these what we call wow moments in psychical research. You don't get many, I have to say. Most of it's a kind of fallow field, and unfortunately there's so much rubbish out there on media, etc., which they're only trying to entertain people. There is no wealth in it whatsoever. There's no depth, and that's why you really have to read the good books, read the material. Now, I have to say that in my books, I've given people an overview of some of the things they can look at. And at the end of both books, I point you in the direction for further reading. Mine is by no means an in-depth study of each thing, but one thing is an in-depth study of is some of my own work. And this is one of my personal wow moments. We can do, as you know, I've got 3 peer-reviewed papers with Professor Archie Roy on mediumship, where we tested the hypothesis that all medium statements are so general they can apply to anyone. And we said,
and just for the audience, sorry, who may not know, Archie Roy, Professor Archie Roy was
an emeritus professor at Glasgow University of astronomy, professor of astronomy.
Astronomy, right? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
And Archie was one of these people, going back to one of your earlier things. Archie was always quite interested because he was in Glasgow University as a young man, and there's a whole section seemingly of books on psychical research by all the greats in Glasgow University. And as Archie said, at 19 he thought, what's all this rubbish doing in a university library? But as he also said, to my credit, I read some of them. And like me, he thought, something in this. I think I'll investigate. Anyway, Archie and I were sort of drawn together bizarrely in 1987 with the formation of the Scottish Society for Psychical Research. Archie was the original president and I was one of the original committee members. But that's neither here nor there. I forgot. Anyway, the boring stuff is eventually we formed this group called PRISM Psychical Research involving selected mediums, and we constructed a protocol for triple and double blind testing of mediums within a very large group of experiments which were carried out over 5 years. It was a long haul, but I'm so glad we did it. Nobody else has tried to replicate them because it's quite difficult, but we did because we were a good mix together to do that. And after the third published paper, when we apply the strict protocol, we nullified that hypothesis by saying, the hypothesis, remember, is all medium statements are so general they can apply to anyone. We nullified that with odds against chance of 1,000,000 to 1. And that's including all the data, the good mediums, the not so good mediums, the excellent ones. We used every piece of data that we got. Now, that has never been seriously criticised, that work. In fact, there are professors now quoting it. I have seen them do it. And our work has never really been criticised except for one chap who shall be nameless, who was arguing a little bit out the statistics. We could have done it this way or that way. Doesn't matter. It's reshuffling the chairs on the Titanic. The odds against chance are there. So we have nullified the fact that good mediums, and that's key, good mediums can impart relevant information to specific sitters, even when the sitter doesn't know that they are the sitter. It's very complicated, but that's that type of research work. But we also have what we call spontaneous research work. Because people do, Archie and I, we give lectures all over the place. We've given lectures at conferences jointly, individually, and so on and so forth. This woman came to me in 1996. And she said that her daughter had been murdered and the police were not getting anywhere. And I knew instinctively that she wanted me to set up a meeting with a medium. But I felt that it was just too raw for her that her daughter had been murdered. I thought, that's too much. So instinctively I said to her, can you bring me an envelope with something that belongs to your daughter, and I will take that sealed envelope and ask various mediums what they can get from the envelope. So she said yes. So I arranged to meet her another time, and she brought me this A5 brown envelope, which can only describe as bumpy. It just felt bumpy inside. Couldn't tell what was in it, a watch, whatever, just bumpy. So I went to a couple of mediums who made some statements about it, but didn't sound awfully grand to me. So I then took it to a medium that I know quite well, a very good medium actually, and I'm able to go into this person's house, into the house with the medium. It was a man, was sitting at a computer with a cigarette in one hand and a laptop in the other. And he goes, oh, hello, Trish. I went, hi. So I threw this envelope down and I said, can you tell me what you can get from that? And he said, do I have to? And I went, yeah. And he went, okay. So reluctantly, he put his hand on the envelope. Very reluctantly, I have to say. He put the hand in the envelope and he looked at me and he went, I've got a girl here that was murdered. And I just went, So I had my notepad and all that. So he made 29 statements pertaining to this girl that was murdered, including the clothes she was found in when her body was found. And it turned out later, because I didn't know this girl, the medium didn't even know what the envelope was about. It turned out the newspaper reports of her clothing were all wrong. But the medium gave... And it was like this. It was like a three-way conversation. She's telling me she was murdered. She's telling me she was found in, a pink top, a grey skirt, ankle boots, and so on and so forth. She's telling me she misses her 3 cats. Now, I just thought that was a bizarre thing to say, but I'm writing down 3 cats. She's telling me she lived in a cul-de-sac, one up in the right. She's telling me her boyfriend, and he did name the name I'm not going to say, we'll just call him David. That's not the right name. She said, David was the first one to know I was dead, and he phoned my mum. She's telling me she's got 2 tattoos on her body. She's got 2 hearts entwined above her left breast with an arrow through them, gave the colours, and she's got another tattoo behind her right arm of a rose and gave the colours of that. There was a whole lot of information like that. I can't just remember off the... Oh yeah, she's telling me that as we speak today, my mum has moved my photograph from the mantelpiece to the top of the television. So I'm writing all this down. Oh yeah, and she's telling me she was in Corntonville prison when she was 15. And I'm thinking, oh God. So I'm thinking, well, this is either right or it's wrong. I was in Corntonville prison when I was 15. She's also telling me that she had a termination of a pregnancy when she was younger. Can't remember all the rest. These are sort of highlights. So
Sure.
I made I went... the medium's looking at me, and I'm looking at the medium. I said, well, I don't know if it's right or wrong. And I'm thinking, well, I can't swear in this program. I'm thinking, well, that's either...
No, you can do, it's fine.
I'm thinking, holy shit, that's either right or wrong. You can't say I was in Corntonville prison when I was 15. I mean, I don't know anyone that's been in prison, far less a women's prison for young girls.
Yes.
So I'm going, oh shit, So that's fine. So I thanked the medium. I think we had a cup of tea, and I left, and I made arrangements to visit the mother in the house. It was about 2 days later. Never been to a house before. So I got to the mother's house, walked in the door, and the first thing I saw was a photograph of a girl on top of the television. And I said to her, oh, is that your daughter? She said, yes, that's her. She said, I just moved her picture there 2 days ago from the top of the mantelpiece. And remember what the medium said. And I said, all right, that's nice, lovely girl, so forth. So I said, now, if you sit there, I've got some statements here made by a medium. Now, they might be totally and utterly all wrong. Don't be afraid to say if they're wrong. So I started off, whichever way I started, I can't remember, about the 3 cats and up the stair on the right and her boyfriend's name. And the medium also gave me a description of her murder, a description of the murderers, and an address in Dumbarton Road in Partick. But this is a psychical researcher's dilemma. This is where responsibility comes in. I wasn't prepared to tell her mother any of these things because I thought to myself, they might not be right, and I'm not going to do that. I'm also not going to tell the mother about the termination of a pregnancy because she might not have known. Anyway, I trundled through the ones, and sure enough, if every single statement was absolutely correct, including the fact that she'd been in Corntonville prison when she was 15, I was amazed. I was like, wow. I thought that's just amazing.
That's incredible.
So there was 29 pieces of information, 7 of which I did not iterate to the mum because I felt it was too raw. It was bad enough that her daughter had been found murdered without getting a description of the murder. But I did establish later on, because the description given from the girl through the medium was that it was all her injuries were at her back. And I did establish later on that her injuries were all on her back, but I didn't count that as a plus. So that was fine. So there was other things. So I went back home and started to do a few statistics on the information. Now, 22 out of 29. Now, in science, if you're honest, you have to include everything. I had to include the statements, the unfair statements that I didn't tell her, but I still included them. I included them as wrong or not known, but for statistics, I had to say they were not correct because I didn't know if they were right or wrong. So even at that, 22 pieces out of 29 absolutely correct, and that's 76%, and that's without me actually giving her the other. So some of them were kind of quite uncheckable, but 76%, if you work it out mathematically, it's an incredible significance.
And that's just this case.
And that's just this case. I worked it out off the top of my head. If we took, for example, that each statement had a 50-50 chance of being correct, like she misses her 3 cards, well, that's not a 50-50 chance, is it? She's got 2 tattoos, and the colours, the shapes, the positions, all of that, that's still not a 50-50 chance because this girl might not have had any tattoos at all. As I say, I think I said she lives in a cul-de-sac. Yep. One up on the right. Yep. Her boyfriend's name was which was correct. So on and so forth. She was in prison. Didn't ask the mum about the pregnancy, right enough. But all of the pieces of information that I had, every single piece that I offered to the mother, and I encouraged her to say if it was wrong. She said, no, that's correct, that's correct. And when she said yes to Corntonville Prison, I nearly, had an accident like the man up the ladder, painting the ceiling. I thought that's just unbelievable. Of course, the medium doesn't know this, hasn't a clue what's happening.
No, and this is a great example of what you've given here. It really, really is. And thank you so much for sharing this with us. I really mean that. Because it must have blown your socks. It really must have.
It did.
But, and as you demonstrated there at the beginning of this story as well, there's good mediums and there's not so good. And when I say not so good, it's a difficult one, this not so good, because this is the way I look at it sometimes. I mean, you may see this differently, but some mediums resonate with certain people, and they don't resonate with others. So one person may go see a medium, and the information is not so great, but another person sees the same medium, and it's absolutely spot on.
That is true, but that's not not the type of medium I'm talking about. There are so many people now that do a couple of courses. They want instant tea, instant coffee, instant mediumship, and they think
doesn't work like
they're
that.
ready to talk to the public. The other thing that bugs me, which is actually not what we're talking about, is people that go for weekend courses for hypnosis and then want to regress people to a former life. They should be hung, drawn and quartered for that, because it comes back again to consciousness. They're interfering with consciousness in hypnosis, and that just bugs the hell out of me. They should not be doing it when they don't know what they're doing. It's okay if you're experienced. Now, Gordon Higginson, the very famous English medium who was fabulous, Gordon Higginson trained for 9 years before his mother would let him on a platform. And by God, did it pay off. Gordon was fabulous. And there are also mediums today who quite openly say, I'm doing this because I want the money. Not the way. Okay, they're entitled to some money. Every medium's entitled to money. As a psychical researcher, we never get any, but that's a different matter altogether. But the good mediums, in any event, if you've got a broken heart and devastated, they will give you a reading for nothing, not even if you offer them money. There's such a range of mediumship. That's the problem.
I agree with you. And let's just touch on what you've just touched on there as well. Yes, I think you're right that, well, put it this way. This is what I think is true as well, that we all have mediumistic capability. We all are our own psychic, in the sense where we can connect to what I would call our higher self, our soul, our oversoul, however you want to term it. That part of us that seems to be left over for where we came from and where we're going back to. Yep. So we have this ability to tune into this through maybe meditation and through other means as well. Now, but when you're going to take that connection onto a stage or to a larger public arena, it does need a lot of training, and probably, and to be surrounded by the right people as well. So absolutely, I completely agree with everything you're saying. You can't just rush into it, and also, who's to say as well that when people see a medium and it's coming through with the wrong information, I wonder if that's on purpose through the spirit side.
No, I've never seen that done.
I say that as in misinformation, as in the sense that they do not want to be guiding your life. It's for you.
They won't do that.
No. But it's for you to come up with your own truth. Like some people can be psychic junkies.
Well, absolutely.
What I mean, just don't know. What if it's to test you? What if they're giving you a test back? We'll tell them this because just to test them, so that they really, in the end, do go with their own truth and what feels right, and not needing to come back to our truth all the time.
I'm not sure about that. I've really not come across that, but I have seen good mediums. In fact, one of the best. Well, I shouldn't say one of the best Scottish mediums is Gordon Smith. And I have seen Gordon Smith on a platform give 2 messages and say, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not getting anything else, and sit down. Now, that's honest. That is what they should do. I should just add here that in our scientific studies in 5 years, not one medium got 1 single penny for taking part in the mediumship research. because they trusted me, they trusted Archie, they knew we wouldn't make a fool of them. And by God, did they do well in that double and triple blind testing.
Well, there's also the thing as well. If you are a good medium in a sense, and you're doing it for the right perspective, I think really you'd want to test yourself, because I think most people with that gift, honestly, a lot of them will probably wake up some days and think, is this for real? Am I really doing this? And question.
That's correct. Good mediums do that. In fact, I gave a lecture. Right, well, it was this week really, in the Arthur Conan Doyle Centre, and I always start my talks more or less after the introduction by saying, hands up those people in the room who question themselves and say, am I really mad? Is this crazy, what I'm thinking, I'm believing in? And I'll say, now be honest with yourself. There has been a time you've said to yourself, am I talking and understanding a load of nonsense? And everybody who's honest will put their hand up, including me. But it's cases like the mediumship murder one, the R101, the apparitions, the veridical materialization, and all the stuff that the scientists have done in the past as well. These are the white crows. I take it you know the quote from Professor William James, do you?
No, just remind us.
Professor William James said, to disprove the theory that all crows are black, you only have to find one white crow. And I have found hundreds of white crows in my travel. Don't just take my word for it. Read all the fantastic wealth of information that's out there. The Society for Psychical Research in London was formed in 1882 to examine the things that you and I are talking about just now. Eminent scientists of all kinds, 3 Nobel Prize winners, Flammarion, the astronomer, Carl Jung, Gardner Murphy, William Crookes, Oliver Lodge, and hundreds and hundreds of other scientists taking these things seriously. And the good thing is nowadays is quantum physicists are beginning to take it more seriously. They don't mind speaking out because they know life is not what we think it is. This table is not solid, it's moving. And we are not as solid as we think we are either. And in quantum physics, you can have an overlap of things where 2 things can exist in the same space-time and not be aware of each other. And that fits in beautifully with a survival theory. That might not be the eventual answer, but it's at least one way of thinking about it.
Right, well, this is leading on to so many important parts of what you're mentioning here. Let me just go back to another point you made. I'm sorry that I'm not mentioning too much material out of the book. I'm going to get into that as well, but we are touching and skirting around a lot of the subjects in the book. I will say this about your books as well. It's great because there's so many subjects you touch upon in the book, in the books, shall I say, as well, which are appearing up on the screen right now, that it covers a whole range of subjects, which is like really fascinating. But going back to what you're saying as well, and let me just mention one thing about mediums. I think, like anything, there's there's good builders, there's bad builders, there's cowboy builders, and there's the honest ones, and that's the same in this field.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah. So when people say mediums they're just a load of old crap, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You've just not met one that's good, and the majority of them are good, right? So and or they feel that they're being true to themselves, which is all you can do. Mm-hmm. I think if you're coming from the right place of wanting to do it to be of service, I think all mediums are, in a sense, healers, in a sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even as a psychical researcher, through talking, I can heal with words because of knowledge as well. And that's not making myself big. It's not. It's just a fact.
Of course it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we touched on what the potential, as in from a scientific point of view, just there, the potential of what our understanding currently right now is, and it is not that high probably compared to where we're going with our understanding.
It's not at all.
No, it's almost like the evidence of the continuation of consciousness does not want to be found. It's almost like it's hiding away all the time, so that you can never really prove it in a sense, because the results would always differ because it's not wanting to be consciously be found. Right?
Well, this is what I love. As you know, I did maths, physics, logical stuff. I've got no imagination whatsoever, but philosophy interests me now more than ever, because if we take the case of the murdered girl, the medium was getting this information. He could see the girl's head. She was allegedly talking to him and giving me this information. If that information was not coming from the girl, from her point of view, where did the information come from? It certainly wasn't the medium's consciousness. It wasn't my consciousness. I knew nothing about it. And it was done in such a way, it was the girl's personality and everything that comes through. So this is what I do in the books. I make arguments for and against certain things. And I say, well, look, this is what happened. That's exactly as it happened. If you can provide me with a better theory than I've just provided as a tentative theory, then let's have it. But your theory must cover all the bases. It must explain every single thing about that particular phenomena. And nobody can do that.
No, and when they get these clever
yes, that's okay.
on
you
TV,
can say that.
Yeah. Being on American TV or UK TV, they are. It's just, it grinds me so much because they'll get the as you've said to me on before, they'll get the worst case to choose from, right?
Correct.
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes.
Yep.
Or the person that they get in to be the opposing side. The evidence of that case, the person that's presenting it, is not the best at presenting, maybe,
Correct.
Or is, right? So it can be two ways either side, right? It could be a great guy that's presenting, or a woman that's presenting it, or it could be weak. But no matter what, that skeptic has made his mind up. He's an atheist, and he's never going to change that mind. That is his viewpoint. Now, you can't get around that, but you could say, but at the same time, I hope I'm open-minded to say, well, there may be nothing when you pass on. Yeah, that may be true. But at least to be able to look at it and say, but there could be based on this evidence.
Absolutely.
And I'd rather live my life based on that it could be, purely because, well, why do I do it for, really? Why? I think it's because I enjoy it. I think it's from a lot of love. And I think, with the knowledge that comes through from unconsciousness, you can make a difference in the world.
Absolutely.
But then atheists that I've met, they're very nice people.
There's nothing wrong with atheists.
They're very loving people.
The ones
they're
that are wrong are the avid skeptics, because they're not the definition of a skeptic is someone who's not sure and is making inquiry. But the people you're talking about, they just know it can't happen, so therefore it doesn't exist. That's not scientific.
But then the public are drawn to that opposing person because it's coming from fear, and that's the one that not wins, but the one that
you're quite right. They bathe on reflected glory from another discipline when they know bugger all about what we're talking about. Because some of these people, and I won't name any names, some of them have agents that get them on these shows to be skeptics, so they're getting paid to be skeptical as well. So we'll not even go there with the particular names. But that's a fact.
Absolutely, but then there's some great near-death experience cases from scientists recently.
Absolutely.
That have had their own experience. Alexander,
I know Ibn Alexander.
Ibn Alexander, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm hopefully going to be in contact with him soon. Had this amazing experience where he was an atheist before, in a sense, which is fine. And now, he's had his own experience, which now he's, pushing that into the scientific community, his understanding of what he perceived it to be, which he probably will change in time as he grows to his understanding of his knowledge as well. But, even an atheist or skeptic, they're not going to come up to us and stab us, they're going to come from love. And I always say to people, right, if you're going to treat situations from love and you're not going to hurt people, my point is, when I'm saying these things, is that surely where does that love come from? Is that love part of consciousness, or is that the blackness that we go to?
Well, this is one of my latest arguments. Some people are putting out the theory we're all in this matrix, we're all in some giant computer game. But just exactly as you said, why, if I see someone, I know someone, they've had a terrible tragedy, why do I cry for someone else I don't even know? What makes me feel partially of what they're feeling in their terrible tragedy? That can't be part of a game as a matrix. I know we're all joined in consciousness anyway, but that kind of thing, as you say, I think there is a loving energy force, whatever you want to call it. I don't like the word force behind it. Even if there is a designer, it's a designer that wants us to grow within consciousness.
And I'd like to think that if there is a matrix, if there is a designer beyond, if the matrix is true in a sense that there is control, that it was done without agreement before we came here. So the idea that we are unable to not control it is, I don't like that just doesn't feel right. No. But if we chose to be under control by something greater, to have an experience that we can only have by going through this, then, well, I would rather go with that because that puts me back in charge. And I don't like to see God as well, which is just the word dog backwards. I don't like to see God, being above us.
No.
I believe we're equal to it. Now, most religious people will say that's just nonsense. You have to bow down, and everything else.
No.
But I don't feel that. I feel that we're having an experience on behalf of it if it does exist like that. So some interesting things we're touching upon here.
People say that God is within every single person. You're part of it. There's not anyone looking down on you. As I say, if we do it like that, and very, very quickly, we have actually spoken about it off air before. You never know when you're trying to do good, but not as a do-gooder. I'm based on the evidence, but I'm very much empathetic with the people who have problems, but I do not suffer fools gladly. I have to say, I don't. If I've come to learn patience this time, I think I've failed, but I have contributed in other ways. Just last year or the year before, can't remember which, I was giving a talk in Edinburgh. Very good, fine. I'm going out the door, and this man was standing at the end of the room. I'd never seen the man before, didn't know him, man maybe in his 50s, and he touched my hand and he said, I just wanted to thank you for that. He said, today you have saved my life. And I looked at him and he was so sincere, and I had to hurry out for other reasons. And I thought, wow, if I've given that man some hope, whatever the word was I said, whatever, what more can you ask to help another person? It's huge. That's the reward you get for that. Huge.
Again, just another fascinating story that you share in there as well. And I know you've not shared that on many platforms, so thank you for sharing that there with us. And again, you just don't know the lives that you touch sometimes, even when you on past people that you've mixed around with, or conferences that you've been to, or you will go to. That's a beautiful thing about this work. So, just touching again on what you were saying earlier on about the idea that none of this is solid potentially. That as our science and our understanding has grown, we see things from a different perspective nowadays. Well, and it was something you touched on earlier on as well about the spirit world, that you don't like talking about that particular side of it because it's about consciousness for you, in the sense that that's what is more provable to you, in the sense of it's more solid for our understanding.
It is, yes.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? That what if all the books out there were almost not quite right? That the understanding of the framework of where we go to has not really been spoken about as it maybe potentially is, because one, it's kind of beyond our understanding right now. We're not supposed to really remember totally, or we've not been ready before to really consider a different framework, and what we think it is actually not what it is.
Well, I don't actually see a great problem with that, because some people like to call it levels of the spirit world. I'm just calling it levels of consciousness. And one thing I always make clear to the students is, in all of this, we do not have the correct words. We do not have the words to describe things that happen. So this is where the skeptics win, because we might use a word wrongly and they'll say, but that doesn't mean that. I don't see any difference between levels of spirit, you want to call it, or levels of consciousness, because I think it's exactly the same thing. Now, going back to the Silver Birch philosophy, Silver Birch, who says he's not a person, he's a collective consciousness that speaks through a particular medium. And honestly, the words in there they're just mind-blowing. They're so sensible. And Silver Birch says, a man can develop, by man he means man and woman, of course, they can develop psychically or they can develop spiritually. And the man who develops psychically alone will only get so far. The person developing spiritually will get so far. But where you get a man or a woman who develops psychically and spiritually together, there you have a wonderful human being. And he said, I cannot describe the next realm for you because you could not understand it. It's beyond the understanding of humans. So that really answers your question.
Well, it does. I mean, Seth from the Jane Roberts material, his material was actually channeled through Seth too. I got to find out recently that actually this was after an interview I did about Seth. Someone contacted us, and I think it's true what he was saying actually, that actually Seth used to channel through Seth too. So Seth may have been a discarnate entity on one level, channeling to a higher level above him, information about the understanding that even there, and I'm sure there were levels above Seth too that they were channeling to. What I'm saying is that our understanding of the framework is maybe not what it is. We've used the words like the spirit world and heaven is on earth and all that, but actually, and even the UFO phenomena now, that's a strange thing with the UFO phenomena, that's all going into the consciousness realm, that these beings visiting are highly spiritually developed, in tune with the idea of our past lives and the connections that we've served with them in past lives, coming here to observe, connect, reconnect, help us, help them. It's very that field is shifting. So and another understanding of that field as well is that maybe those crafts are not what we think they are. That actually they're from higher realms in the levels that we cross onto when our souls cross over.
Could be.
Why would they need to come in a craft to do it? Well, maybe it's not even a craft as we understand. Maybe it's
every single thing in this. I've rationalized it. Everything we do in this comes down to emotion, intention, and motivation within our own consciousness. And as you say, it's how we perceive it. It's how we perceive these things. Going back to what you said a minute ago, in the book On the Death of My Son by Jasper Swain, the boy obviously materialized to the father in the back seat, but he also became in communication with the father directly. And he said, Dad, he called it the spirit world. The spirit world is exactly as it is here on earth, but we've got different rules. It's the rule of natural law. He said, where I am, and he likened it to brightness. He said, I'm in a room in a place of particular brightness. I can go up a level to a higher brightness, but it hurts my eyes and I have to come down again. I can go down to the lower levels, but when I get down to the murky levels, I get a bit scared, Dad, he said, and I run quickly, come back to where I am now, which describes what that this is my idea of it. I used to say it was like bubbles in a jar. In science, you have a big bell jar like that. And if you filled it full of all the gases that invisible gases, what would happen? The light gases would go to the top and the heavy gases would go to the bottom, and there would be a gradation between all of that, but there would be a certain mixing in of the levels as well. And that's just obviously not correct, but it's a way of thinking about it.
Yes.
It's a way of thinking about the consciousness where we are. I mean, you wouldn't expect, for example, Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler to be in the same strata of wherever it is we go, of consciousness even.
And unless there's no wrong and right as we understand it.
Well, I think I'll keep going back to Silver Birch. I don't know why I'm doing that. Silver Birch says there's only one sin in life, and that is interfering with another person's progress while they're in this life. Now, that's clever, because if you couldn't murder somebody and you interfere with their progress, you could harass them psychologically, interfering with their progress, and so on and so forth. You can restrict people's freedom. That's interfering with the progress, for example, Hitler, for example. And I think it just resonated with me. It sounds right. Sounds right to me. I might be wrong, but it sounds right to me.
No, you have to go with what feels right. I think that's really important with this stuff, because, it's not like the Holy Bible where it's the set of rules, or the Quran or any other religious text. With spirituality, I'm going to go against the dictionary definition. I know it's a bit wrong, but my definition of it is to make up your own truth and what feels right. Yeah,
exactly.
And that is being empowered by yourself. But that boy that came through to his father. What if that was just the reality that boy was making at the time? What if that wasn't the ultimate truth? What if someone else that was just as close to that boy was having a different experience because they were creating a different experience?
I'm sure they do. Now, I'm absolutely sure
I'm not trying to dilute anything you're saying. I'm just saying, wow, what if it's not anything that we think it is, and it's just so much greater, but it just gets so confusing. But I think I love talking about these subjects, but I think one of the greatest things about these subjects that has to be, which is very much in your book as well, and a lot of other good books, is that it has to bring through teaching information that's healing you in the present moment. Otherwise, what's the point? Because we are here. We are not supposed to be where they are because we've chosen to be here. It's very important to be here. I think what your book brings through is ways to see this life from a different perspective, to appreciate it more, and to see that you're in charge and you create your own reality in a sense.
Absolutely. I believe, just me, from what I've seen, every single person's death will be slightly different. Where we end up will be different. You're quite correct. That boy's experience won't be anybody else's experience. That's his experience. But what is consistent through the literature, not any of my literature, is that when people are actually on a deathbed, they seem to regain consciousness before they die, and they all see people waiting for them. Every single person, without fail, sees someone there waiting to take them over. Now, to me, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, it is, and that is true. And my friend's mother is a nurse that worked with people passing, and they all say the same goddamn thing. You know,
Yep.
She said to me, if she was here now, she'd be here agreeing with us, because having worked with the people passing on, that they're upright, they're pointing, they're talking about people in the same room that aren't there, and they're not. These people aren't losing their mind. There's something greater that's around them that wasn't
yeah,
aware.
you're right. There's a funny thing happened to one of my girlfriend's fathers. Now, he was very, very deaf before he died, very deaf, but he understood this actually, and he knew it was nearly his time. So she was sitting in a bed beside him, and he said to her, "Is it nearly my time to go?" And she said, "Well, I think it's near, Dad." And so they're having this conversation, and she suddenly realised he can hear every word I'm saying. So he actually got his hearing back just before he died for 15 minutes or so. But now that's interesting. That's something to think about.
Yeah, that's, again, another great bit of evidence there, yeah.
Yeah.
And only you know that story because you know the people as well. So
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. What about people who would say that we're just tricking ourselves with this information? We're tricking ourselves, and we're not allowing ourselves freedom to move away from this understanding that actually mindfulness is the way forward. It's a more atheist approach, but mindfulness is more empowering than going down this type of belief, if that's what they would call it, that we might have right now.
But I always say to people, I don't have a belief. I have a knowledge based on the evidence. And I think what we're doing is much more mindful than thinking that death is the end. And we have the evidence here to prove it. You've read a lot of the stuff I've written, you've read stuff that other people have written, and these things are as they happened. Going back to a previous point you made there, you said when people come back, there has to be a reason. The most common reason, as you'll see in the book, is to let people know when they've passed, I'm here, I'm fine, I'm okay, I've arrived, cool. I mean, I had the most amazing evidence back from Archie Roy, evidence that nobody else would know since he passed. And it started 2 days after he died, when the medium wouldn't even know that Professor Archie Roy had died, and the medium didn't even know I was sitting in the audience at the time. I've just had the most amazing evidence that's undoubtedly could only come from deceased people. That's one thing. People come back to say, in fact, one of his first words were, "I've made it." And he worried. He knew he was near. He had Alzheimer's. And it worried him, if you had Alzheimer's, when you got to the other side, would you be confused? Would you know you were dead? Would you know what was happening? And that worried him. So the first thing she said, she described the man. She didn't give the name or anything. Described a whole lot of astronomy and all that. And she said, this gentleman just is doing that and saying, I've made it. I've made it. And I thought, that's a good start, but the rest went on to be amazing. They come back to let you know they're okay, but they can come back like the man painting the ceiling. He came back for a purpose, to tell him not to do it. They come back to let you know they're okay. They come back for a purpose. Trying to think, they might come back for, I can't think of one offhand, but they do come back for a reason. Whether it's for education purposes, like the R101. The men that all died in the airship 101, they came back to let the people on Earth know that the British government had made an arse of it completely. He said, the man said, we're murderers, we're all bloody murderers. We should never have taken this up. We shouldn't have allowed them to take it off the ground. And they came back one by one to describe where the government had gone wrong trying to hurry in this space race, as it were, for these blimps at the time. So nothing changes. But so there's always a reason. There's always a reason to come back. It could be for in materialization. It's just for proof. Look, the consciousness, the spirit world is real. Here I am. This is what I know. Go and check such and such. You'll go and find this. It's all for the evidence.
But for some people, it would never be enough. You know, no matter if the evidence was there, they'd be so switched off to their own arse that they...
But they have to explain it. They have to explain why these things happen. How would these things happen? How would 200 people all see the same thing in the same room?
Well, they'd easily say it's just cold reading and all that kind of stuff.
No,
but but you know the type of people I'm talking about.
Oh, I do. I could name you names.
Yeah. But I don't hate these people for being like that. I just think they're more close.
I feel sorry for them.
They would say I'm closed-minded. I say, well, they're closed-minded for not looking at just looking at the bigger picture. I'm still okay to say, well, there may be nothing, but just look at this. They're not okay to say, well, there may be something. They can't go down that road.
They won't even look at the evidence.
No.
There was one time, Archie, it was years ago, Archie, I was in a radio programme with a female super skeptic that we won't name, and it was a live debate. I can't remember what it was called, and Archie had her on the ropes, and Archie would say, well, what about blah, 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 and she went, oh, I don't know that case, and would not have a bar of it. So you can't win. But it's not for us to win.
No.
And that's why I wrote the books. As you know, we give lectures at university, and I thought in cold winter nights when it's pouring of rain, rather than do this, I'll put what we know and what I know into books, not for me, but for people out there that need evidence.
Yes.
And I've told you before, I've had people through my, and I'm not a medium, through my contact in the website, people who have been brokenhearted, and even pointing them in the right direction, saying the right word at the right time can make such a difference to their existence. And that's another bottom line for me.
Absolutely. Now, let me just ask you a bit of a personal question as well. And there's a reason for this. Is there any aspects of your life where you've not healed, in a sense? Parts of forgiveness that has not taken place yet, or things that you could have done which you haven't done yet, in the sense of forgiving?
Funnily enough, I'm quite good at forgiving, because if you hold anger, resentment towards somebody else, the only person that's being hurt is you. And I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of tarot cards. I have to tell you that right now. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. I'm just saying I'm not a fan. And a few years ago, things have happened in my life. I've done everything the hard way. It's not been easy. And at one point in time, somebody did me out of a lot of money. And anyway, we'll not go into that. However, this other friend of mine had arranged. She said, "Oh, I'm having a clairvoyant up, and it'll be you and me and 4 other people for the tarot reading." And I thought, shit, I didn't want to say no, because I know this person very well. So I turned up, very unimpressed, I have to say. And when I walked into the room, now at that particular time I was divorced from my first husband, but I still wore my wedding ring. And I went in just like this, and I sat down immediately, and she said, before I sat down, she said, "You're wearing a wedding ring, but you live alone?" And I said, "Yes, that's right." And then she went on to say various things, and she did the tarot, which actually was actually quite good, believe it or not. But it was psychic things. It was about the here and now, etc. And then she said to me, "Somebody owes you a lot of money." Now, she said, "But you know what?" She said, "You've got no anger, you've got no resentment. That's gone." She said, "I've never seen this before." She said, "You have no resentment." And I said, "No, I don't suppose I have. I suppose I made a bad decision." So I can only take her word for it. I don't think I've got any resentment, no. But for anybody, if you're angry at somebody, let it go. Not going to do you any good at all.
This is my whole point for this, for you to be, like you're being so honest right now and sharing this, is that, you know, if we take this to the other side with us, or where we go back home to, whatever this is, I think it has to be more beneficial to sort it out here, surely.
Well, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. There's no way I'm ever going to get that kind of thing back.
No. What I mean is that for us with these issues, if we don't forgive, it's more beneficial to sort things out while we're still here, rather than leaving it to linger when we cross over.
Well, the only way if you've got resentment to sort it out is to let the resentment go, whatever that resentment is, whether it's jealousy, anger, hatred, bitterness, whatever. Let it go. Just bring it. It's a book. Shut that chapter in the book and say, right.
That's right.
I'm going forward with the next chapter. I can't actually do anything about that person.
Yeah.
All I can work on is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from then on, you say, right, to hell with that.
That's so true.
Do the things that are going to make me happy.
Yep.
And I always say to people in talks, do you know who the most important person in your life is? You.
Yeah.
If you're not right, you can't help anyone else.
So true.
And don't forget, just very quickly, because I know time's running out.
Sure.
Don't forget, I also did a 5-year healing study, studying excellent healers. Now, we don't have time to go into this in this program, but maybe at a later date. The amount of healing that's coming through in the form of like psychic surgery, and the healers don't take any credit. They say, it's this person working through me, etc. And the evidence is there to back it up within my study. A 19-year-old boy doesn't know about medicine. He doesn't know about healing. He doesn't know, the usual forms of healing. If it's not the person in the spirit world, like Dr. Lang, that's doing the work, who's healing these people?
You're referring to psychic surgeons, yeah.
But the good ones, there are some,
yeah.
but it doesn't need to be psychic surgery. It can be ordinary hands-on healing as well. Something's healing the people.
Oh yeah. No. These people that hold these healing circles at spiritualist churches, wow, it really does work. It's incredible. You feel the warmth from the hand, and you're thinking, is this making any difference? And a day later, you're like, well, it's gone. Whatever issue I had. So yes, there's a lot of people that go to psychic churches to develop their healing abilities as well, because they teach all this through circles and other forms at these different churches. Okay, yes, we are getting very close to the end.
Just
here.
very quickly,
Yep.
You said earlier, everyone can be a medium. I don't agree with that. Everyone can paint. Everyone can put a paint on a canvas, but the best mediums are born mediumistic. There's no doubt about it. Some of us, you can go and you can be trained to a certain standard, but you're never as good as the person that's born mediumistic. Healing, on the other hand, everybody can be a healer.
Well, but what about those people that, through some part of their life, maybe in their 30s, start creative writing, start channeling?
That's a different thing entirely. That's a whole other chapter, as you know,
Right.
with the automatic writing. That's a different thing altogether.
And the receiving stroke channeling, you reckon that's a different process, because that happened to me at 37, and I wouldn't say I had any psychic abilities prior to that I was aware of.
And 37 seems to be the magic age. That's when I started to look at these things as well. There is a magic to 37, and I don't know what it is. I've noticed that.
That's very weird, right?
That is interesting.
Well, I had the world's youngest channeler on just a few days ago. The video's on our YouTube page now. She was 20. She started off when she was 19 with her book, channeling a book. And interesting stuff. But yeah, no, okay, so that's different to what you're talking about with the mediumistic. Yeah, because for me, I mean, I'm not happy giving readings out like that just right now. I'm happy just, receiving in a sense, but I know I probably do have that ability. But like you say, I think someone who's born open with that, because that's their life path, that's different. Yeah. Okay. There's so many subjects in your book here, and we've barely scratched the surface, to be quite honest.
Well, remember,
with
I used to give 40 hours of lectures on these
Yes.
things, so we're not going to go much further.
No, we're really not.
Not today.
No. Okay. There was another question, and I can't think of it for the life of me right now. It's left me a little bit. Yes, final ones. Yes, EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. There's a lot of people out there right now who are gathering voice phenomena, and it's a big thing for them. It's a big thing for the people around them. They have lots of followings because people are really interested. They're kind of like the people in Sainsbury's, where it's a way in. It's a way to wake up. It's a way to, But for me, I don't know. Why would they're coming through, and I suppose it is a form to show that life continues. Most definitely, yeah. But I don't think it's not the pinnacle of it all. It was a start.
No, it's a starter. It's a wee taster. It's the introduction. It's like me listening to the first set of mediums giving information. You think, wait a minute, there's something. There's something in this, and then you go on. I have personally never heard AVP that has convinced me of anything, but I'm not saying it's not out there. I'm sure it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and what would you say is the most important message in all this field, in all these years you've been doing it, and your truth as it is now compared to what it was years ago? What would you say is a sort of a final important message we could give the audience?
The important message I give all the time is, to my mind, to my satisfaction, as originally a skeptic, an atheist, whatever you want to call it, through the evidence, I absolutely firmly believe that there's no other suitable explanation for all of the phenomena except survival. And it's not only the information, it's the way in which it's given with the personalities. And it's, people say, people can go and Google things and look up things on the internet, but not the kind of information that's personal, that nobody else would know. And the best kind of information is something you don't know, and you've got to go and check it. But to my mind, I am absolutely convinced survival is a fact. That the nature of that, I couldn't say, but I am thrilled by it all. I just love it. I'm hopefully able to help some people to heal broken hearts as well, and to give them the will to carry on, because we have to go forward in the love. Well, I say the love and the light. We have to go. It's like a joke. Go towards the light, but it's not a joke, because that's what all the people in near-death experiences. They look forward, they see the light, and they go through the tunnel. And we have that again and again. Doctors, nurses, neurologists, you name it. And for me, I'm happy with that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I've been a bit naughty. Your website's been coming up on the screen, and so is your books. But for those maybe listening to this just as an audio podcast, what is your website?
It's www.Tricia Robertson it's Tricia Robertson, not the English Robinson. TriciaRobertson.weebly, weebly.com.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
And you'll find the healing study there as well. You'll find lots of information.
And people can get in contact with you via that website.
They can through the website. There's a contact form.
Yeah, and both the books available obviously on Amazon and all good bookstores.
Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble. Easily available. You can order it through a bookshop if you want to.
All over
as well.
The States as well. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful.
And States. States can get it. Yeah.
Okay, well, Tricia Robertson, I just want to say it's been such an enjoyable time with you. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you on again, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.